Random House Audio presents S is for Silence by Sue Grafton. Read for you by Judy, Kaye. Chapter 1. Liza, Saturday, July 4th, 1953. When Liza Mellencamp thinks about the last time she ever saw Violet Sullivan, what comes most vividly to mind is the color of Violet's Japanese silk kimono, a shade of blue that Liza later learned was called cerulean, a word that wasn't even in her vocabulary when she was 14 years old. A dragon was embroidered in satin stitch across the back, its strange dog-shaped face and arched body picked out in lime green and orange. Flames twisted from the dragon's mouth in curling ribbons of blood red. That last night, she'd arrived at the Sullivans' house at 6 o'clock. Violet was going out at 6:15, and as usual, she wasn't dressed and hadn't done her hair. The front door was open, and as Liza approached, Baby, Violet's 3-month-old buff-colored Pomeranian, started yapping in a shrill little doggy voice while she pawed at the screen, punching holes here and there. She had tiny black eyes and a black button nose and a small pink bow affixed to her forehead with stickum of some kind. Someone had given Violet the dog less than a month before, and she developed a fierce attachment to it, carrying the dog around in a big straw tote. Liza disliked Baby, and twice when Violet left the dog behind, Liza put her in the coat closet so she wouldn't have to listen to her bark. She'd gotten the idea from Foley, who disliked the dog even more than she did. Liza knocked on the door frame, a sound barely audible above the dog's yap, yap, yap. Violet called out, "Come on in, I'm in the bedroom." Liza opened the screen door, pushed the dog aside with her foot, and walked through the living room to the bedroom Violet and Foley shared. Liza knew for a fact that Foley often ended up sleeping on the couch, especially when he'd been drinking, which he did almost every day, and even more especially after he'd busted Violet in the chops and she'd stopped speaking to him for 2 days or however long it was. Foley hated it when she gave him the silent treatment. But by then, he'd be sorry he'd slugged her, and he wouldn't have the nerve to protest. He told anyone who would listen that she brought it on herself. Anything bad that happened to Foley was someone else's fault. Baby pattered into the bedroom behind her, a fluff ball of nervous energy with a party favor of a tail. She was too small to jump up on the bed, so Liza scooped her up and put her there. Violet's tow-headed daughter, Daisy, was lying on the bed reading the little Lulu comic Liza had given her the last time she sat, which was the night before last. Daisy was like a cat, always in the room with you, but busy pretending to be doing something else. Liza took a seat on the only chair in the room. Earlier in the day, when she'd stopped by, there had been 2 brown paper bags sitting on the chair. Violet said it was stuff going to the Goodwill, but Liza recognized a couple of Violet's favorite things and thought it was odd that she'd give away her best clothes. Now the brown bags were gone, and Liza knew better than to mention them. Violet didn't like questions. What she wanted you to know, she'd tell you outright, and the rest was none of your business. "Isn't she adorable?" Violet said. She was talking about the dog, not her 7-year-old child. Liza didn't comment. She was wondering how long it would take to suffocate the Pomeranian while Violet was out. Violet was sitting on the bench at her makeup table, wearing the bright blue kimono with the dragon across the back. As Liza watched, Violet loosened the tie and shrugged the wrap aside so she could examine a bruise the size of Foley's fist that sat above one breast. Liza could see 3 versions of the bruise reflected in the trifold mirror that rested on the vanity. Violet was small and her back was perfect, her spine straight, her skin flawless. Her buttocks were dimpled and ever so slightly splayed where they pressed down against the seat. Violet wasn't at all self-conscious about Liza seeing her undressed. Often when Liza came to sit, Violet would emerge from the bathroom naked, having dropped the towel so she could dab behind her knees with the violet cologne she used. Liza would try to keep her gaze averted while Violet strolled around the bedroom, pausing to light an old gold that she'd leave on the lip of the ashtray. Liza's gaze was irresistibly drawn to the sight of Violet's body. No matter where Violet went, eyes were drawn to her. Her waist was small and her breasts were plump, drooping slightly like sacks filled nearly to capacity with sand. Liza's boobs were barely sufficient for her double-A brassiere, though Ty would close his eyes and start breathing hard every time he felt her up. After they kissed for a while, even if she resisted, he'd find a way to unbutton her shirt, nudging aside her bra strap so he could cup a budding breast in his palm. Then he'd grab Liza's hand and press it between his legs, making a sound somewhere between a whimper and a moan. In her church youth group, the pastor's wife often lectured the girls about heavy petting, which was not recommended, as it was the quickest road to sexual intercourse and other forms of loose behavior. Oh well. Liza's best friend Kathy was currently taken up with the moral rearmament movement, which preached absolute honesty, absolute purity, absolute unselfishness, and absolute love. The last was the one that appealed to Liza. She and Ty had started dating in April, though their contact was limited. He couldn't let his aunt hear about it because of things that had happened at his last school. She'd never been kissed before, had never done any of the things Ty introduced her to in their times together. Of course, she'd drawn the line at going all the way, but she couldn't see the harm in Ty's fooling with her boobs if it made him feel good. This was exactly Violet's point of view. When Liza finally confessed what was going on, Violet said, "Oh, please, sweetie, what's it to you? Let him have his fun. He's a good-looking boy, and if you don't give in to him, some other girl will." Violet's hair was dyed an astonishing shade of red, more orange than red, and not even intended to look real. Her eyes were a clear green, and the lipstick she wore was a pinky rose shade. Violet's lips formed two wide bands across her mouth, as flat as the selvage on a remnant of silk. Her pale skin had an undertone of gold, like fine paper in a book printed long ago. Liza's complexion was freckled, and she tended to break out at that time of the month. While Violet's hair was as silky as an ad for Breck shampoo, Liza's ends were crinkled and split from a miscalculation with the Tony Home permanent Kathy'd given her the week before. Kathy had read the directions wrong and fried Liza's hair to a fare-thee-well. The strands still smelled like spoiled eggs from the lotions she'd applied. Violet liked going out, and Liza babysat Daisy 3 and 4 times a week. Foley was gone most nights, drinking beer at the Blue Moon, which was the only bar in town. He worked construction, and at the end of the day he needed to wet his whistle, was how he put it. He said he wasn't about to stay home babysitting Daisy, and Violet certainly had no intention of sitting around the house with her while Foley was out having fun. During the school year, Liza ended up doing her homework at the Sullivans after Daisy was in bed. Sometimes Ty came to visit, or Kathy might spend the evening so the two could read movie magazines. True Confessions magazine was preferable, but Kathy was worried about impure thoughts. Violet smiled at Liza, their eyes connecting in the mirror until Liza looked away. Violet preferred to smile with her lips closed because one of her front teeth was chipped where Foley'd knocked her sideways into a door. Violet liked her. Liza knew this, and it made her feel warm. Being favored by Violet was enough to make Liza trot around behind her like a stray pup. Breast inspection complete, Violet shrugged herself back into the kimono and tied it at the waist. She took a deep drag of her cigarette, then rested it in the ashtray so she could finish putting on her face. "How's that boyfriend of yours?" "Fine." "You be careful. You know he's not supposed to date." "I know, he told me, and that is so unfair." "Unfair or not, his aunt would have a fit if she knew he was going steady, especially with someone like you." "Gee, thanks. What'd I do to her?" "She thinks you're a bad influence because your mother's divorced." "She told you that?" "More or less," Violet said. "I ran into her at the market and she tried to pump me for information. Someone saw you and Ty and ran blabbing straight to her. Don't ask me who tattled because she was very tight-lipped. I told her she was nuts. I was polite about it, but I made sure she got the point. In the first place, I said your mother wouldn't let you date at your age. You're barely 4.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?